B2B selling can be tricky, even trickier if you're selling a complex product or service to an infrequent buyer. Today's guest is confronted with both these challenges on a daily basis. Poor him, but lucky us, as he's about to share how he does it so successfully. It's a businessy episode 649 of the 14-year-old award-winning Small Business Big Marketing podcast.
Well, I said, welcome to a small business marketing show where successful small business owners share their souls to take your marketing straight to the lead. Now, here's your host, Mr. Timbo Reid.
And welcome back to your weekly dose of B2B marketing. That's business to business for those not in the know. I'm your host, Timbo Reid, and I have an insatiable curiosity for uncovering marketing ideas that help businesses just like yours to grow. And I do that through weekly in-depth conversations with successful business founders that have walked the path before us. You, infinitely more importantly, are a motivated business owner, ready to crank out some great marketing to build that beautiful business of yours into, you know what, the empire it absolutely deserves to be. As per usual, team, there's marketing GOLD dripping from the ceiling over here at Small Business Big Marketing's HQ. So let's get stuck right in. So I know I've set up today's special guest, Mladen Jovanovic of BindiMaps, as a B2B sales expert, and he is. And you're going to love the tips he shares, including a super simple formula for ensuring your prospects feel understood and why focusing on your staff first is also good for B2B selling. But Mladen is also the co-founder of a very unique business called BindiMaps. Think of it as Google Maps, but for the indoors. That's right. BindiMaps starts where Google Maps finishes. It maps large buildings, shopping centres, hospitals, sporting venues, and so on, and delivers these maps via an app. I do love the never-ending way people make money these days. Indoor mapping. Love it. It was launched in 2019. The business employs 19 staff today, has offices in Sydney and Melbourne, and has mapped indoor locations across Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. And they have got some fairly significant clients, as you're about to find out. So lean in as Mladen shares the BindiMaps origin story, why the original target audience quickly changed once they went live, and how they've gone about selling a complex product to an infrequent B2B buyer. And just a reminder that all Silver Rama members of my Small Business Owners membership can watch the full video of this interview over at patreon.com/marketing podcast. In fact, it's been up there for a week already. Membership has its privileges, right? It's 47 tax-deductible dollars a month, and you can trial it free for 7 days. Righto, enough from me. Let's go meet BindiMaps co-founder and B2B sales expert, Mladen Jovanovic. Now, Mladen, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way up front. What's with the name BindiMaps? To me, a bindi is something that you get stuck in your foot when you're walking through the forest and it's uncomfortable.
Mate, that is a great question to kick off. We weren't originally called BindiMaps. We started out as a company called Banjo Maps. So our founder...
I'd ask the same question.
So our founder, the original founder of the company, Dr. Anna Wright, she loves her dogs, and she has a dog called Banjo. So what she did initially was she decided to call the company Banjo Maps, but it was also a cool acronym for what we did. So beacon-assisted navigation and journey orientation, right? So Banjo. But then it evolved, and then we started getting some traction in the market. We started getting some customers, and we came across Simon Sinek, and he always talks about start with why. Talk about why you do what you do, not what you do, and we had that at top of mind, and we're like, you know what? Let's really talk about why we do what we do, and what does our company stand for, and it stands for what we're on a mission to restore independence to people and allow them to navigate the world independently without any assistance from anyone. So Bindi is short for be independent.
Ah,
there you go.
Got it. Is that universally known, or you just forced that kind of acronym into it?
Oh, no, we just made that up.
You got it. Good on you. Be independent. So it's interesting. First of all, name changes are interesting because they can be costly. and they can be painful. And secondly, it's interesting that you kind of took Simon Sinek's advice. How did Simon Sinek's advice play into the idea that Bindi is about the why?
I mean, we were always strong in our why and the problem that we were solving out into the market. It's just we never looked at it that way to start thinking about, how do we communicate our why and how important it is to communicate the why. It was more just, everyone that starts a company does the same thing. Look at our product, look how amazing we are, look at all the awesome things we do, and they start harping on about, features and all sorts of things without actually communicating why they're in the market and what problem they're solving. So that was that shift when we started to grow up a little bit.
I love your tagline, where Google Maps end, we begin. It may not be a tagline, but it's certainly a line that I found on your website, which is very self-explanatory. Tell me, where'd the idea for BindiMaps come from, Mladen?
So our company was really born out of necessity. I mentioned earlier, Dr. Anna Wright came up with the original idea for the company. And that was due to a diagnosis that she received from her doctors, where the doctor said, Anna, you're going to go blind. It's a matter of time. You need to start thinking about it. So then Anna thought, going blind later in life, it's going to be hard to get used to a cane. It's going to be hard to get used to a guide dog. And with all this technology that's available, there must be an easier way. There must be an easier way to get all of that contextual information about internal areas of a building and to be able to use technology in a way to navigate. And she went through an accelerator program called She Starts. It was run by a company called Blue Chili. And they pretty much invested into early stage, non-existent companies. It was a PowerPoint deck at that time. It was an idea. And they would provide a team and they would build the minimum viable product and get some feedback from the market. So then after they figured out, how do we get Anna to the shopping center, for example, or how do we get her to find the coffee shop inside a particular building? Then we started thinking about what are some other use cases and how does the product evolve from there?
Wow. Talk about a business born out of a very, very personal need. Incredible. Gosh, Anna must be incredibly passionate. I assume her eyesight continued to deteriorate.
Luckily, medical technology caught up and she is able to retain what sight she has left, but she's not able to regain what she has already lost.
Yes.
But yeah, she's an awesome woman.
She must be incredibly passionate then about BindiMaps, given, her own personal experience. So let's explain it. You map indoor spaces. That's what BindiMaps does. Google Maps maps the entire outside world. Bindi maps the entire indoor world, but you don't just do it like Google does. They're just not driving around the streets. You're not just walking around inside every single building in the world. How does it work from a business point of view? Yeah,
so you're exactly right. When you cross the threshold into an indoor environment, BindiMaps is the app that you turn for your navigation purposes, just like Google Maps outdoors. It is a lot trickier to map indoor spaces than outdoors, as you can imagine. So what we do is we work based off existing architectural drawings or floor plans for a particular building. So let's take a large shopping center. What we would do is we would get the floor plans for that space. We would map out all of the different stores and places that people can navigate to. We would upload that into our app, and we would deploy a network of Bluetooth sensors to help with localization indoors, to help locate people very accurately within indoor spaces. So we have accuracy of about 1 to 2 meters within indoors.
Are these beacons, what we know as beacons, these Bluetooth
Correct.
sensors? Yeah. I'm interested to understand beacons at a deeper level. We'll touch on that in a minute. Keep going.
Yeah, so we would deploy those. The installation process is super quick. We can get a whole shopping center up and running within 4 or 5 hours.
Wow.
And then once we do that, we would walk through, add in all the information. We would explain. We can go down to the granularity of explaining how the taps are operated in a restroom, whether they're sensor operated or manually turned. Because one of the main things that someone who's blind, when they leave home, we've heard many stories about them having to dehydrate themselves before they leave home because they, out of fear of having to use a public restroom and not knowing, one, where it is, two, how the flush button's operated, how the taps are operated, where do I dry my hands? So there's many things that people don't consider when, designing for accessibility with just putting a braille plaque on a door to let you know that it's, male, female, accessible, but there's a lot more that you need to know.
Am I right in saying, I think in our pre-interview you said Bindi was born out of the necessity of our founder losing her eyesight.
Mm-hmm.
You then realise upon launching Bindi that actually its usage is for much more than people who are impaired by their sight.
Exactly. Yeah. So that was the initial problem. That was the initial problem we started solving. It was for people who are blind or vision impaired. And then we started selling to our early customers, and then we got to a point where we realized that the technology that we've developed can serve a much larger purpose. It can help everyone find their way around. So we added accessible routes so people in wheelchairs can avoid stairs and other obstacles. And I mean, it's not just for people in wheelchairs. Imagine if you're a young parent with a pram and you have to avoid stairs and other obstacles. So that can be toggled on to help you find the most accessible routes and spaces. We've got visual maps now, so sighted people can just use it just like imagine Google Maps had a baby with one of those interactive kiosks at a shopping center. That's the exact concept now. So you can just use the map to find your way around. And now our team's actually doing some preliminary research into sensory maps. So as it stands at the moment, there is no system that's an interactive sensory map that's also dynamic and updated in real time. So
an interactive sensor. What's a sensory map? That's to me that says touch and smell and various other, and using all the sensors. Clearly not.
No, it's not. It's not touch. There are sensory maps that are tactile and you can touch them, but a sensory map is essentially a map that will represent different sensory sensitivities within a space. So crowds, smells, lights, sounds, surfaces, they could all be sensory sensitivity.
Wow. So the map's telling you, hey, listen, slippery floor ahead or noisy room or? Somewhat.
So it could be telling you, food court coming up, large crowds, noise. It could be telling you, you're in Big W walking past the bicycles, strong rubber smells. It depends. And that could be really helpful for people who may have sensory sensitivities, who may have, who may be sensitive to light, sounds, crowds, or anything like that. We haven't built anything yet. We've just been researching on how we can solve these problems as well. So accessibility is really what's at the core of BindiMaps, and that's what separates us from all other wayfinding and navigation companies.
How fantastic. Have you got a box you can tick for a scenic route?
Not at the moment.
Don't take me past the boss's office. Don't walk past a certain shop. I hate walking past that soap shop in big shopping centres. What is it? Lush. I always think it stinks. That's how I'd use BindiMaps. Take me here, but I must not go past that Lush shop. It stinks.
You know what? That's probably the most frequently mentioned one, the candle store and the soap shop. It's like, we don't want to walk past.
I don't know how they get away with it. Shopping centre owners just want the rent, but I'm sure they don't want the soap smell. Anyway, I digress. Quite incredible to think, are there you got competitors?
Everyone's got competitors.
Because I just haven't heard of an indoor mapping company. Maybe I've been living under a rock, but
no, everyone's got competitors, no matter what business you're in.
Yeah.
But yes, we do have some competitors that are playing closely in the field. There are a lot of companies that focus on, there's a handful of companies that focus on solving the problem for people who are blind, for example. Then there are, many more companies that are doing indoor mapping and navigation, but don't have the accessibility component. Then there are other companies that are just focusing on accessible routes for people in wheelchairs. But what BindiMaps is doing is bringing that all together, so you don't need to rely on different services to solve the same problem of accessible navigation.
Yeah, right.
So we're taking all navigation and putting it into all indoor navigation features, putting it into the one system and making it the go-to system for all indoor navigation. I mean, Google and Apple are doing the same thing.
They are.
They have indoor navigation system, but there are a lot of complaints around it. It's not that accurate. It's, they still rely heavily on GPS.
I mean, the two companies you don't want doing what you're doing are Google and Apple. Clearly that's a big threat. But you are moving forward with BindiMaps. You're shaking your head. I like it. How is it not, mate? I'd be shitting myself.
Think about it, right? Like they're huge companies. They're massive companies. And for them, they like to do things at scale. They like to be able to deploy something across an entire country or the globe. So for them to take a step back and, go from shopping center to shopping center, customizing these highly accurate maps and this highly accurate information that we put in and explaining how the taps are operated in a restroom, it's not worth it for them as a company. The risk is too big. It's, it'll take too many people, resources, time, money. They would rather wait for little old BindiMaps to grow up and have millions of locations across the globe and be like, oh, now that's easy. Let's just buy those guys.
I hear what you're saying. I mean, I get it. Yeah, that's clearly also it might be your biggest threat. It's also your biggest opportunity to be bought out by those guys. But I would have thought quite the opposite, that everything you just explained in terms of the complication of creating BindiMaps, the bigger the company, the easier it is. They've got all the resources, they've got all the time, they've got all the money. You guys are, you're not bootstrapping, but you don't have what they have. but I think what you're saying, you're laughing here. I think what you're saying is it's just not their focus, and it's much easier to buy a solution than create one from scratch. Okay.
Yeah, and the risk is too high. The risk is too high for them. Investing all of that money and resources and everything into hoping something will work, it just doesn't make sense.
So the business model for BindiMaps, like you are not going around like Google is with their cars and mapping the world. You're not going into buildings and shopping centres and libraries and sporting complexes and just, hey, excuse me, I just want to map the place. I'll be out in a minute. This is it's a contract, right, between you're out there selling to businesses, big businesses. I mean, you've got some great clients, KPMG nationally, the National Library of Australia, St Vincent Hospital. You're not just going in and mapping these places. You're approaching them. You're saying, hey, would you like us to map your interiors? They say yes. They contract you. And then it appears on the app, and that's available to the public. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes, it's a relationship that we build with these locations and these customers. It's because it's their private spaces, and it's not as simple as driving down the street with a car. We have to understand the intricacies of the places that we're mapping. Is there anything private that they don't want displayed? How are we going to showcase this to the public? What information's vital? There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of trust that we build up with these clients as well.
So the interface then, if I'm using BindiMaps, is it's not real life. It's like a Google map, but it's inside, right? It's I don't even know what the word is. Like, it's not illustration.
It's a map. It's at the moment it's an image.
It's not street view. It's not street view type.
No. It's an image, and it gives you the familiar sort of what they call blue dot navigation, except ours is a red arrow. But yeah, it's a 2D map at the moment. We are moving to. I'm going to make it too complicated. Yes, we are. It's a map at the moment.
Tell me, I want to talk about year one and getting it to market and the ups and downs of that. But you did touch on beacons earlier, Mladen, and I haven't really had a conversation around beacons, I don't think, at all. And many listeners probably go, well, what's a beacon? Is that something out in the ocean? Do you want to explain beacons and maybe just give 2 or 3 usage cases really briefly about how businesses are using them to grow?
Sure. So a beacon is just an off-the-shelf piece of hardware. They vary in shapes and sizes. The ones that we use are the size of an AirPods box, one of those little AirPods Pros, so they're quite small. And we stick them onto ceilings and other surfaces using double-sided tape. So that's why the installation process is so quick. They are battery operated, and depending on the types of beacons you get, they vary in battery life. You can get beacons that are hardwired. A lot of construction companies are adding them into their developments from the ground up. So they're all mapped in. Electricians would come in, they would hardwire them in, so you don't need to worry about batteries.
And they're a Bluetooth device.
Correct, yeah. So they're a Bluetooth beacon, but their functions vary. It's just like a Wi-Fi router, for example. It's there to give Wi-Fi and internet, and what you do with it is up to you.
Yeah.
So same sort of thing with a Bluetooth beacon. We use them. So the purpose of ours is just to emit a little Bluetooth pulse every few milliseconds, and then as the phone is going through the space, it can pick up the strength of the pulse. And in our case, it can't pick up the direction, but you can get directional Bluetooth. Ours is omnidirectional, so it's just one way.
Right.
But yeah, you can get directional Bluetooth.
So they're reading the play on behalf of BindiMaps and saying, hey, this is what's going on. I think one usage case that I've heard is where you can, let's say I am a member of Anaconda Outdoor Store and I've downloaded their app, and if I walk into their store, the beacon will recognize that, hey, one of our members has just come in, and it might alert the sales staff to be able to say, hey, g'day, Tim, can I help you? And gives them my first name. Is that's an example of good beacon usage?
Yeah, that's one example. Another one is you can actually add information into the beacon. So as you walk up to the beacon and you're within 2 meters, it will spit out, G'day, Tim. Welcome to Anaconda,
Specials.
for example. Yeah, specials. It can tell you the specials depending on where you put them. Security and cleaning companies use them quite a bit, and to monitor whether, how often they've cleaned the toilets, or, have they inspected the rooms whenever they need to inspect them. So that's another use for Bluetooth. I mean, duress systems in hospitals rely on Bluetooth for accurate localization within floors, and you push a panic button and it'll guide people there. There are so many uses.
This is slightly off topic, and I digress, but it's just reminded me of a fun video I saw on Instagram Reels recently where, how with smartphones, they triangulate the information, and that's how that comes up on your Google Maps or your Apple Maps with the red line on the traffic saying there's a traffic jam ahead, look out, because there's so many phones in that area that there was this guy in San Francisco walking down a very quiet street on a Sunday morning with a kid's little wheelbarrow with about 100 smartphones in there.
I saw that one.
No traffic around, no people around. But if you look at the map of where he is, there's this red line.
Gridlock.
Gridlock. Yes. Excellent. Now, year one. Let's talk about year one. So Dr. Anna, she's been diagnosed, not a good diagnosis. She's running the risk of losing a sight. She does an incubator. She comes up with this great idea for mapping indoors. BindiMaps is born. It's an interesting business because I guess there's not a whole lot of building owners, business owners, shopping centre owners going, geez, I wish someone would knock on my door and offer to map my building. So what was year one like? How did you get traction?
Year one was tough. Year one was really, really tough. But I think what really helped us get through is we focused more on the users than we did on the customers. So for us, even now within the company, we're very strong on employees come first, then it's our users, and then it's our customers. Keep the employees happy. Then we do our best to work on making our users happy and delivering the greatest value for our users. And then that will make our customers happy because they will be able to deliver the best product to the user base.
Wow.
So the reason why we do it that way is because we set out to solve the problem of accessible navigation. And in the first year, by staying true to solving that problem, that's really what got us our first major customer. And a lot of people looking at the business from an external point of view, they may say, oh, well, that's a tiny market. How many people have a disability anyway? Or how many people are there that are blind to warrant this business actually existing? But we thought, even if there was one, it's worth it, right? So we stayed true to that, and it was Stocklands was our first major customer. So they're a large real estate company in Australia. They develop, retail, commercial, residential, and they came knocking on our door. I mean, we did have some other smaller pilot locations.
They just came knocking. Stocklands.
They were looking, and that was before COVID. So that was 2019, I believe. 2019 or 2018, yeah.
Yep.
And they reached out to us asking, how do we make places accessible? Because that's what we harped on about. We're talking about accessible navigation. How do we make places accessible? Because that's another really big thing for them. ESG reporting. Everyone forgets when they're talking about ESG, they talk about environmental and how do we help the environment?
What's ESG?
Environmental social governance.
Jeez, love a good acronym.
Yeah, so that's something that a lot of large companies are focusing on now. What's our impact to the environment? What are we doing to help the community? Mm-hmm. And how do we put some measures in place? So they were undergoing that process of how do we make our centers, our shopping centers, more accessible. And then we worked with them on getting our first deployment, which was in Stocklands out in Wetherill Park here in New South Wales.
Big shopping centre.
We installed it there. Yeah, big shopping centre. It was our biggest location at the time. And once we got it in there, we just started learning as much as possible. We started holding what we call the BindiMaps Big Day Out. We started getting people. We had the Cerebral Palsy Alliance. We had Guide Dogs, Vision Australia. We had so many different advocacy groups show up and test the app, and surveys and all sorts of fun stuff and giveaways, and just really trying to learn as much as possible about how we solve this problem.
BindiMaps Big Day Out. That's a nice little marketing play. So that was your way of putting on an event, creating some tangibility around the intangible, and just inviting all the big businesses that have all the big buildings, right? How did you get to them? How do you make that? Again, that's hard. That's sort of bums on seat stuff, isn't it? What was so compelling that they all came along to the first big day out?
Yeah. So with a system like BindiMaps, you're selling, your customers are the shopping center owners and the operators or the building owners. But the users are the people that visit those places. So to be able to maintain that level of interactivity with your customers, you need to do something outside of just providing the service and sending an invoice every month, because, eventually they're going to be like, what's our return on our investment? Because they're not on the ground looking at every person using BindiMaps. So, we thought, how do we get these people to the shopping center? How do we start, getting that engagement up and working with the local community and getting them to tell the shopping center operators how great this system is? So what we essentially did was I opened Google Maps and I just typed in advocacy group, and I looked at Wetherill Park and I saw all the local advocacy groups, and I made a spreadsheet and I just picked up the phone and started calling.
I love it.
Hey, we're running a free event. There's gonna be free coffee, free giveaways. We've deployed this new system. We'd love to get your thoughts. Are you interested in coming? Gave them a few weeks notice, and we had a huge turnout. We had so many people coming along, and the customer was happy. I'll tell you that much. We had an activation going on inside the shopping center, and we learnt a lot. We had the surveys going. It was so crucial to our growth to be able to speak to so many people in one spot and get their feedback. And I mean, on the product development side, we were always big on not building something without getting input from the actual users who are using it.
Yeah, that's a great initiative. Gutsy, but good. I like it. What was the most challenging part of year one? Because again, new idea, bootstrapping, obviously.
Education,
yeah.
Education.
Yeah. And that's a really interesting role. I talk a lot about helpful marketing on this podcast over the years, which is what education is. How have you undertaken the education role in your industry?
It has been so difficult. I think that was probably our biggest challenge for the first few years. Not just the first year, I reckon for the first 3 years at least. Teaching people about the problem, how big the problem is and why it's worth solving. Because as you said, it's a completely novel solution. We were the only ones in Australia doing something anywhere remotely close to that. So we're just teaching people, I had some conversations during sales meetings where, people weren't rude. They weren't trying to be rude, but they were just, they didn't know. Like I had some people saying, well, what's my dollar return per blind person?
Woo.
If I install this system, how many more blind people are going to come to this shop and spend money? And how much money will they spend? So, what are the basket sizes? Then you start learning, you start getting into the lingo of what retailers use, like what's my basket size and this and that, and they aren't the type of people that we want to speak to.
They're such unreasonable questions, aren't they? Like I sort of get why they're asking. They've got a KPI, and whatever they spend, they're going to have to justify and quantify, and some things just aren't quantifiable. I used to struggle with this years ago working in a big advertising agency, producing expensive TV commercials and billboards and the client would go, how much more are we going to sell? Like I was like a 22-year-old young startup out of university. Like, I don't know. It's going to be fun making the ads though. I shouldn't say that, but I can now. I'm out of advertising.
No, well, exactly, right. And then you got to factor in other things. You're not just excluding that one person who could potentially buy something, but what about their friends? What about their family? What about all the other people that would have come to the space?
And what about what it does for the brand? I don't know whether your clients actively promote the fact. I've never seen a sign at a shopping centre or a hospital or any big building saying, "Hey, listen, this place is mapped. Download your Bindi map." But it's a lovely addition to the brand, if you like.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, you're at a very beautiful part of Australia where we don't have any installations yet, and we'd love to come up to Noosa. But yeah, we do advertise. We do tell people, and companies do. They're actually starting to report against BindiMaps to show people in their environmental, social, and governance reports and their ESG reports. We actually had Brookfield Properties in their most recent report talk about how they nominated X amount of buildings to deploy BindiMaps in. So they can become accessible. So we initially thought that shopping centers were going to be our biggest customers, but it was a huge surprise to see that about 80% of our revenue comes from office buildings. Office buildings are our biggest customers because they're so focused on, becoming the employers of choice for people with disabilities and making everyone feel welcome.
Yep.
So, and that's what Brookfields did. They rolled that out throughout their office building. So, if they have Telstra or any of these big tenants come in, they're like, look, our building is equipped with BindiMaps. You can hire whoever you want with disabilities. They're welcome to come. So yeah, there's a lot that we're doing.
Let's talk B2B selling, Mladen, because from a marketing point of view, from what I understand, you haven't done a lot just yet. Well, that's not true because marketing is everything and everything is marketing. But in terms of marketing communications, it's not something you've been totally active in. But B2B selling is something you've done really well and something you're a specialist in. Now, and I haven't had I often get, not often, but I have a number of listeners who keep saying, hey, Timbo, can you have a B2B discussion? Because you interview so many companies that are selling to consumers. How about ones that are selling to businesses? My view on that, first up, and feel free to challenge me, is B2B, B2C, B2G, government. I think it's all nonsense. It's all P2P, which is people to people. Am I missing something?
I mean, in a sense, yes, you're right. But you're so wrong as well.
I love it. Quote of the episode, you are so wrong. Go on, how come?
No, but I mean, yes, you're right. We are people selling to people. But there are so many different ways to sell. There are different processes. There are different methodologies. There are different. It's a whole different world. Like, for example, if someone was asking me, about B2C sales, business to consumer, I probably wouldn't be in the best position to talk you through how to sell. And the reason why is because, my entire professional life, I haven't been selling to consumers. Usually when you sell something to a consumer, it's a small ticket item, it's less than 5K or whatever. It could be a course, $2-3 grand. It could be a car that's 20 or 30 grand. Usually they're much smaller ticket sizes. And they have a very different process of going through a purchase decision. There's your board of directors could be husband and wife, for example. It could be, they're deciding on what property to purchase or anything like that. But when you start talking about business to business sales, there's different departments, there's different stakeholders, there's, top line initiatives. How does your business align to those? It's completely different. And then government's a whole different thing. Like, how do you align to, what are their procurement protocols? How do you align to that? What are their thresholds? Do you need to sit below 50 grand to be able to, go single source procurement? There are so many things to think about. Yeah, that's why I said, yeah, you're correct in a sense that it is people to people, but the process and the way you go about it is completely different.
I'll sort of admit that I'm more wrong than I am right. However, the whole, and I'm trying, P2P, it's a clever line, but the person sitting at Stocklands, A, is still a human, B, has the need to trust the person they're going to be buying from, has a need to want to establish some kind of relationship with the person they're buying from. Doesn't necessarily have to be that deep, but needs to be, engaging enough that, yeah, this is someone I want to transact with. So at that level, B2B, B2C, it's the same. So where do you start? Where does it start to veer off? And we, do we have to be more serious when we're talking B2B? Do we have to be more formal?
God, I hope not. No chance. No, I love treating all of my sales encounters from that human aspect. Like anyone I speak to, I'm like, g'day, how you doing? How was your weekend?
Yep.
It makes me a little uncomfortable when you get into those situations where everything's too formal. And
makes everyone uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not me. But, to answer your question, I mean, I had a great conversation with someone called John Dean. I think his company is called Sales Director Central or something along those lines. And we talked about selling complex products to infrequent buyers. And this is, okay, so let me explain. So we sell a complex product to an infrequent buyer. Usually when we're selling to businesses, we're selling to, a diversity and inclusion manager or a workplace manager or someone whose role isn't to procure solutions for the organization. Mm-hmm. Now, when we start speaking to, Jane who's the diversity and inclusion manager, and we convince her and we take that, P2P approach. let's say Jane and I have we have great rapport. We trust each other. We've got, a great relationship. We crack jokes every single time we get onto a meeting. She loves BindiMaps and really wants to get BindiMaps. The problem is Jane doesn't know how to sell BindiMaps internally at her company. So my job becomes, instead of selling directly to Jane, I have to teach Jane how to sell to her bosses or to her organization. I have to help Jane navigate that procurement process. I have to help Jane put together that business case. And what does that look like? And how do we align the value of BindiMaps to the 2023 to 2024 top line initiatives?
Mm-hmm.
What are the top 3 priorities of the company, and how does BindiMaps align? So it becomes more working with the person to sell internally than it does selling directly to the person, because most times they're not. It's not just one hand that signs the paper. It's many, and we have to figure out, where does the budget come from? So Jane's like, look, I have 20 grand to spend this year in diversity and inclusion. I have no more budget. So then it's up to me to be like, Jane, thank you for telling me that, because in another situation, I have been able to work with the facilities department because we reduced the workload on changing signage or whatever that may be. We've been able to pull budget out of the marketing side of the business and, justify why. And you need to coach them through that journey, right? It's not just, Jane, do you want to buy? Yes, no. Yes, I'd love to, but that's where you get stuck in that process of relying too heavily on them.
So you first and foremost understand Jane, where she's at in the pecking order, in the decision making tree, and all that kind of stuff. I remember, again, back in my advertising days, which were very formative years, Mladen. Glad I'm not there anymore, but I worked for this big agency, and the owner of it was a guy, Peter Clemenger, and he caught me one day on the stairs, and he never talked to me because I was just this young bloke and he was an old bloke, and we just never kind of talked. But he said to me, "What's your job here, Tim?" And I said, "Oh, it's to make advertising, Mr. Clemenger." Used to call him Mr. Clemenger. And he said, "Well, it's not." He said, "You're here to make your client famous." And that was a real turning point for me, because you're right. I mean, I went to work each day to make ads, but in a sort of metaphorical way, in a more kind of, psychological way, I had to make sure my clients, who were brand managers, marketing managers, those type of people, felt as though they owned the ideas. They're the reason for the brand success, despite the fact that we were doing the work. And it was a really interesting shift of mindset, just like you with Jane, which is, helping her then sell on BindiMaps. As you say, selling complex products to infrequent buyers. I mean, that's a super big challenge.
Yeah, and I mean, that's a lesson that I think everyone needs to take away. What you just said there about having that shift in your mindset to focus on the problem that you're solving, not the features and whatever your product is. Because, whenever you're selling something, no one cares. Like, absolutely no one cares about you, about your company, about your product, about how much money you've spent building it. No one gives a crap. Absolutely no one cares. They care about, what problems is it going to solve for me? And why am I giving, what is the exchange of value? If I'm giving you this $100, how am I going to get that value back?
They listen to one radio station, WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Exactly. So I think yeah, you need to take that away. And like, when you're marketing your business, when you're doing anything, really focus on the problem that you're solving and the benefits people are going to be able to get from purchasing your solution, whatever it is.
So just on the B2B selling, Mladen, let's keep going. So that your first step is to really understand your client, your first client contact. Just a couple more tips, because I know there's a lot of people listening who are in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, overall tips for B2B, I think that the one that everyone, it's probably the most important function in a business, but everyone waits for so long to invest into sales. So if you're running a business, invest early into sales. Start hiring salespeople early, because there's a lead time before you get the payoff training and things like that. So one, invest early. Two, and I think this really builds on what we were just talking about then, with focusing on the problem that you're solving instead of focusing on the features. When you're reaching out to people, I actually, whenever I tell people about prospecting and getting in front of customers and lead generation, whenever you're crafting your messages, there are 3 things you need to keep in mind: clarity, credibility, and call to action. I'm sure that you'd get 1,000 of these LinkedIn connections where people just vomit out a bunch of features and hope that something works for you to request a meeting.
Does my head in.
There's nothing worse, right? And you're never going to get a response. You're never going to get a response. So if you're sending out messages, emails, phone calls, clarity is the first thing. Be really clear about who you are, why you're calling, and what you want from this interaction. So clarity is the first thing. That's your first sentence. Credibility, you got to let them know that you're not the Wolf of Wall Street trying to steal their money. Establish some credibility. We are working with XYZ companies, whoever they are. You got to have that credibility behind you, and then have a very clear call to action. So this ties into that clarity piece. Be very clear about what you want from them. Hey, I want to speak to you about working with you if you're a cleaning company. I want to speak to you about cleaning all of your offices nationally, or putting that contract in place, because there's nothing worse than lying about your intentions. And that's going to get you, focusing back on that person-to-person selling, that's going to set you off on the wrong foot. Because if you say, I'd love to explore some opportunities to collaborate, and mate, you want a cleaning contract, don't you just tell them honestly why you're reaching out. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Be very clear about what you want. So I think, if people can start doing that and stop giving all other salespeople a very bad name, because that really grinds my gears when you tell people you're in sales and they straight away look at you like you're a sleazy used car salesman.
Dirty word.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a dirty word. A salesperson is like a good salesperson. Another thing that grinds my gears is when people say you got the gift of the gab, you'd be good in sales. No, you need to be able to listen. Listening is the key skill in selling.
The gift of the ear.
Exactly. It's like, imagine going to your GP and saying, Doc, I've got a headache. And he goes, here, take some cancer medication, without asking you a single follow-up question. You're like, this guy's crazy. So your job as a salesperson is to be that trusted advisor and to really listen to their problems and how you can solve that, and then advise on how you can solve those problems.
Yep.
So think of yourself as a GP. So you need to be able to ask the right questions, get the diagnosis, and then offer how we can, solve those problems, or how do we cure those symptoms. Yeah, so just listen, I guess, would be another one for B2B.
Mate, they're great tips. Clarity, credibility, call to action, so important. And you use that example of LinkedIn. We all get so many requests to connect on LinkedIn every day. And I know now I'm pretty selective. I used to not be, but I just know the ones that if I accept, there's automatically, not even manually, automatically I'm then going to get this message from them saying, hey, you're looking for leads, Are you looking to get on page 1 at Google? It's like, hey, how about understanding me a little bit? Bit of foreplay. Nothing wrong with foreplay.
What's even worse is like they connect and go, I'd love to hear more about what your company does.
That one.
To see if I can solve any problem.
Well, at least they're having a crack.
Just take some time.
At least they've gone and offered up a question that's trying, but it's a see-through, smelly question, unfortunately. There must be, what should they say? Because, it's a reasonable question, but it's see-through. What's the better question?
Well, if you're connecting with someone, again, just be really clear about why them. Like, why them? You're not. There's nothing worse than, now we can digress into using mass email marketing and artificial intelligence and equipping 19-year-old kids out of university with the ability to reach 10 million people at once. There's a lot of problems that come with that, because you need to be personalized, and personalization at scale is also a problem. But to answer your question of what should they say, tell me why me. Like, why are you reaching out to me? And to tell me because you want to find out more about my company, there's my website.
Yeah, that's right.
Go have do you know what I mean? Have a read. Have a read of the website and let me know if there's anything. Hey, I saw on your product page you've just released this new kiosk. Does it have XYZ functionality?
Absolutely.
If not, we may be able to solve that problem with this, what we have. Do you know what I mean?
If you're a cleaning business, I just walked through your food court and I got to say, it's pretty dirty. Can I come in and have a chat about how maybe I can help you avoid that in the future? Like, it's real.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I saw some great, there's some great outreach emails, but then there's some really bad ones. And you said you're starting to be a little bit picky on LinkedIn. Sometimes, you know what I do when I'm bored?
Ring spammers?
Because because I teach people how to sell on the side, right? Like businesses, I teach them how to put in processes and things like that. So what I'll do sometimes if I'm bored, I'll just open my inbox and just look at the most recent prospecting message that I got. I just write back, not interested, but try this, and I just rewrite their prospecting message.
Oh, that's nice.
And I'll send them back. Let me know how it works.
What's your response rate to that,
mate? You know what? Surprisingly, some people get offended.
Oh, get over it.
Yeah. Some people get offended. They're just like, Anyway, I don't want to get into that, but
No, do, mate. I think that's great.
nah. Some people are really cool about it. I mean, I don't want to start swearing and stuff and letting you know what they say, but I mean, yeah. So some people are really cool about it. Like I've sent a couple of them back, and they're like, "Oh, please, can we schedule some time just so I can pick your brain on how else to improve the sales process?" Because most of the time, for me anyway, I get a lot of startups, right? I get a lot of people that are just starting out on their journey, trying to do business development and things like that. Because you're not going to get many huge companies prospecting on LinkedIn. So it's mostly startups. And then when they reach out to me, they're super grateful. And then I just help them put together a bit of a sales process.
Nice.
Obviously, in my free time, I wouldn't spend hours and hours working for nothing. But yeah, I help them out as much as I can. I mean, you got to give back in some way. And if there's something that I can do in 20 or 30 minutes that'll save them months and months of heartache, why not?
Community service. I get pitches every day to appear on this podcast, and so many of them start with hi, no name, hi, comma, not hard to find my name. I've just listened to your episode with Dr. Katrina Wallace about AI last week and absolutely loved it. My boss would be a perfect guest for your podcast is the next sentence. So my reply to that is, thanks for reaching out. What did you love about the interview with Dr. Katrina Wallace? And I never hear back, because they haven't listened. They've just gone to the website, seen what the most recent episode is. And I mean, it's just, what a waste of time. Absolute waste of time.
I had the exact same experience a few weeks ago because I've got a sales course out on Udemy, and someone reached out, I love the course on Udemy. I was like, great. Which part do you love the most? I watched the preview. I was like, no worries. I'd love to hear when you watch the whole thing.
Hey, what role AI, just AI from a personal point of view, what's your view on it, Mladen? And from a BindiMaps point of view?
I love it. I mean, any technological progression I'm a big fan of. I don't know too much about it. Like when it comes AI in sales, yes, I'm seeing how it's eliminating a lot of the admin and, it's helping people really prepare for sales conversations, but it could also be a very dangerous tool in sales specifically because it's making salespeople lazy.
It's making the world lazy, mate, not just salespeople.
Yeah, but it's if used wrong, it's really, really ruining the profession of sales because I said earlier, 19-year-old straight out of uni, people are giving him systems. Like we have a lot of systems that allow us to reach out to people directly to their personal emails and things like that. So when you got access to that sort of information and AI being able to say, these are the top 100 people you need to reach out to for your business, for example, and you're giving it to this 19-year-old kid that has no idea about, personalization or, anything at all. And they're just blasting, emailing, calling all of these people. It just ruins it for everyone else. So I think, personally, I think it's got a way to go. Like I had a conversation with the founder of Wingman, which is a AI company that pretty much listens to your sales calls and it'll pick out what the most important things are, any action items you need to do after that. Wow. It'll summarize all your notes. So see, that's when it's really, really useful. But then, I think there's just like with any technology, I mean, you create something to solve a problem and it creates 5 other problems.
I agree.
You create the car to move faster and now all of a sudden you've got car accidents. So yeah, there's the good and the bad, I guess.
And the very ugly. And if people want to hear more about that, I did interview Dr. Katrina Wallace about AI a couple of weeks ago, and we put together the Small Business Guide for AI. So that was a pretty useful interview. Hey, Mladen, I love it, mate. Wishing you and Dr. Anna and the rest of the team at BindiMaps massive success. If you want to come and map my place at night, so when I get up to go to the loo, I don't keep bumping into the side table, that'd be great. Although I could turn the light on, so don't worry, I'm fine. BindiMaps.com is where you'll find it, BINDI maps.com. Give your Udemy course a bit of a shout out, Mladen.
Yeah. So it's all about teaching businesses how to sell, and it really focuses on the fundamentals because I'm all about giving practical information that will make a big difference in the shortest amount of time possible. So I think the course is just over 2 hours, so it's super short. It's not going to break the bank. I think it's like $20.
$20?
It's called The Fundamentals of B2B. $20, mate. $20. It's less than you're going to spend on lunch today.
I would suggest, without knowing the course, that is not great pricing because it's B2B selling. People are willing to pay a good price for that. And it feels like it's at $20, it's no good. Anyway, you told me I was wrong before, so I'm just coming back at you, mate. You know,
No, well, look, Mike, because the thing is, startups are strapped for cash. I didn't want to start charging $1,000 for this course. They're strapped for cash. Let's just get something out there. And you know, it's all, you know, how do you build a sales pipeline? How do you get, it's focused on people looking to go from $0 to $1 million.
Nice. If people want to find it, how do they find it on Udemy?
Just type in my name, Mladen Jovanovic, and it should pop up, or just type in the fundamentals of B2B sales.
I'll put a link in the show notes to Mladen. Hey, mate, thanks for sharing, and I wish you all the luck in the world, the success in the world.
Timbo, mate, thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure.
There you go, team. Co-founder of BindiMaps and B2B sales expert Mladen Jovanovic. Plenty to get your teeth stuck into there, I am thinking. Great formula for B2B selling that Mladen shared. Clarity plus credibility plus a clear call to action equals what? A prospect that feels understood. Good salespeople need the gift of the ear, not the gift of the gab. Love a good quote. Plus, I love the mindset Mladen has taken of selling a complex product to an infrequent buyer. Great way to position it in your mind. Check them out over at BindiMaps. That's BINDI maps.com. And I've also included a link to Mladen's B2B selling course in the show notes for episode 649 over at smallbusinessbigmarketing.com. Or you'll find the show notes on your podcast app. Swipe left or right or up or down, something like that, depending on which app you use. Hey, if you'd like to join the discussion about this episode, then head over to Facebook and join the Small Business Big Marketing tribe. Just remember, the minute you start watching cats fall off ladders, it's time to put your phone down and go for a walk. Social media. Don't you love it? I'll see you on the inside. Righto, it's time for you to take action on what you've learned because ideas remain exactly that without action. If you can find the time or the energy or the resource to support the work I do for small businesses, please join the Small Business Owners membership over at patreon.com/marketing podcast, where you can trial it free for 7 days. No obligation, nothing to lose. I reckon you're going to love it. Next week, you and I meet another founder doing amazing things. Who that is, I can't tell you. Why? Because I don't know. I'll know shortly though, and it'll be someone amazing, I have no doubt. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the subscribe button on your favourite podcast app because there's 648 more chats with successful business founders just for you. Big thanks to Sam Heathcote for stitching the marketing gold together and to our in-house rock star, Lockie Doley, for the music bed. And Lockie's just put out the most amazing music video, him live in concert in front of a rather large crowd. I'll put a link in the show notes to that as well. Most importantly, a very big thank you to you for making the time to tune in. I appreciate and respect the fact that you've chosen this podcast, and I hope you have benefited from it. May your marketing be the absolute best marketing. Bye for now.